Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing a Krawler deck profile. So this is a really fun deck that's probably hands down one of the most budget decks of all time. Like this deck, literally you could probably pick up the entire deck for maybe 10 bucks. For the core, you could probably pick up for maybe 5 bucks. I mean, besides the extra deck, there's a couple of extra deck monsters in here that might cost you 10 or 12 a piece, but for the majority of the cards in the main deck, you're probably going to be out maybe $10. Like, this deck is really budget, and I highly recommend you guys playing around with it. It's one of those decks that you might be able to make out of the commons that you found, and it's a really fun deck to play around with as well. They can kind of catch your opponent off guard. That just has a bunch of flip effect insect monsters that do all sorts of different shenanigans. So without further ado, guys, let's get straight into this. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Yugioh X Krawler. This card is a really good 2-of in the deck. Basically, it's the big boss of the main deck. And then when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets this face-down card, you can change this card to face-up defense position, negate the activation if you do destroy it. And then after this card is flipped face-up, while this card is in the monster zone, negate the effects of all activated monsters your opponent controls. And then also, it has the effect of, if this card on the field is destroyed by battle or sent to the graveyard, you can add from your deck to your hand 1 level 9 monster with a different original type and attribute than this card, but you don't play any other ones besides this one. So basically it just has that ability that when it's flipped face up, it negates the effects, which is really good to be able to control your opponent. 3 copies of Krawler Spine. Spine is kind of like Man-Eater Bug. When it's flipped face up, you get to target a monster your opponent controls and destroy it. And then all Krawler monsters share the ability that if this card on its owner's possession leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon 2 Krawler monsters with different names from your deck in face-down defense position except another copy of themselves. So it's something that you have to keep in mind, that all Krawlers share that ability. Then we play 3 copies of Krawler Galley. When it's flipped face up, you can special summon a Krawler monster in your hand or graveyard in face-up attack position or face-down defense position, except another copy of itself. Really good to be able to kind of like swarm the field. This deck is a very swarm control-based deck that you're going to want to put a bunch of Krawlers on field and then link them away to some Krawler and then OTK your opponent. 3 copies of Krawler Receptor. Receptor is interesting because when it's flipped face up, you get to add a Krawler from your deck to your hand, which is really good to be able to just kind of search. 1 copy of Ravener. I just play a single copy of Ravener because when it's flipped face up, you get to target 2 Krawler monsters in your grave and add them back to your hand. Ravener is good because it just kind of replenishes your resources to be able to search and get the ones that are back in your graveyard back into your hand so you can use them for other stuff. 3 copies of Axion. Axion is good because when it's flipped face up, it pops a spell or trap. Really good effect to be able to pop spells and traps in this deck. And then 2 copies of Dendrite. Dendrite, when it's flipped face up, you get to send a monster from your deck to the graveyard, which can kind of help you send stuff like Yugioh Krawler X to the graveyard to be able to bring it back with some of your other Krawler monsters' abilities. So for the other cards that we play that are monsters, we play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is basically here to kind of stop your opponent from, OTKing you and, stopping them from searching stuff and stuff like that. So this card's really good to be able to just stop your opponent from doing all sorts of shenanigans. So, like I said, a lot of the Krawlers have low attack points, but that's not that big of a deal because you're usually going to use them to link into stuff like your Krawler and your other link monsters. They're just kind of here to be able to, do stuff like that. And the best thing that ever can happen to you is hitting a Torrential Tribute, Raigeki, or like a Dark Hole, because you're just going to swarm the field again and your opponent's not going to be like, whoa, wait a minute, what happened? So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing quite a few spells. So we're going to be playing 3 copies of Call by the Grave. Call by the Grave just kind of stops our opponent from hand trapping us. It's really helpful to play the 3 Call by the Grave because you don't want to get hand trapped in this deck. It can kind of be crap when your Krawler gets destroyed by a spell or by like a trap or something or spell, and then your opponent hand traps your Krawler that's in the grave and banishes it, and you're like, well, there went 2 of my monsters. So the Call by the Grave is really good, stop the hand trap of like the Ash or something like that. Then we play 1 copy of Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn helps us get other like Krawler, XYZ, or Link monsters from our graveyard back on the field that get destroyed. Terraforming, because we do play a field spell in here in the form of World Legacy and Shadow. 3 copies of Wormbait. Wormbait is so good in this deck as a 3-up. If you control an insect monster, you can special summon 2 worm monster or 2 worm tokens, both that are earth, and they cannot be normal summon or set. You cannot normal summon or set level 3 or 4 monsters the turn you activate this card or effect, which is not that big of a deal because everything we play is a level 2 or 9. So this card is always live because we always are going to have an insect on our side of the field. 3 copies of World Legacy and Shadow. World Legacy and Shadow is such a good card because all Krawler monsters gain 300 attack and defense, and then once per turn, you can special summon a level 2 or lower insect monster from your hand in face up or face down defense position. And then when a flip effect monster is destroyed, or a flip monster is destroyed by battle with an opponent's monster, you can send that opponent monster to the graveyard. World Legacy and Shadow is such a good card to put on the field because if they attack you, it punishes them. If they don't attack you, it punishes them because you're going to flip them face up. So it kind of puts your opponent between a rock and a hard place with World Legacy and Shadow because they don't really know how to respond to it. Then for the last 3 cards, we play 3 copies of World Legacy Survivor. This card is such an interesting card. It lets you excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, and if you do, you get to add an excavated Krawler monster or World Legacy card from your deck to your hand, and then send the remaining cards to the graveyard. Otherwise, shuffle all of them excavated back into the deck. For the rest of the turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from your extra deck except for link monsters, which is not that big of a deal because everything we play in the extra deck is a link monster, so that's not a big deal at all. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we are actually playing traps in here. We play a single copy of Crusadia Krawler. It's basically just an added monster. So sometimes you really want to have 5 Krawlers on the field besides your Quarliarch, and sometimes you just can't get there. So the Crusadia Krawler is something that you can set turn 1 with setting a card on your side of the field, setting a monster, because you always want to go first in Krawlers because you just want to be able to, set up your plays a lot and set up your monsters on the field. So you want to go first because you're playing a flip monster deck. So you set this on the field. It's kind of like your ace in the hole to put it on your side of the field as an extra Krawler and as an extra body, so your Quarliarch can make all of your Krawlers be able to attack directly. Then we play 3 copies of World Legacy Mind Meld. Mind Meld is interesting because when an opponent's monster activates its effect while you control a Krawler monster, the activated effect becomes return 1 face-up monster your opponent controls to the hand. So if that effect activates and it bounces your Krawler, since it left the field by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon 2 more Krawlers. So basically this negates spells and traps, or negates monster effects, which is really, really crazy. And then it also has the effect that you can banish this card from your graveyard to target a link monster on the field and special summon a Krawler monster in your hand, deck, or grave into a zone that monster points to in face up or face down defense. So it searches your Krawlers out and it negates monster effects. Like, this card is one of the best traps in the game for Krawlers. Then we play 3 copies of World Legacy Pawns. World Legacy Pawns is kind of interesting because you can target a face down monster you control, change it to face up attack, and then you can shuffle a Krawler monster from your graveyard into your main deck, then target 1 monster your opponent controls and change it to face down defense position, which is really cool to be able to just kind of do as a just disruption to be able to, flip them face down, to be able to go into all your different plays. So these are like a really good lineup, these 7 traps for Krawlers. It just makes the deck so consistent where you can just negate monster effects and negate or just flip-flop your opponent's monsters face up and face down, flip yours face up and face down. So it just really, really helps out the deck. So that's it for the traps, guys, and the main deck. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Quarliarch. You need 3 copies of Quarliarch because sometimes you will get one of your Quarliarchs destroyed, and you do need the extra copies of your Quarliarchs because this is the big boss monster of the deck. If this card is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while in its owner's control, you can target 2 Krawler monsters with different names in your graveyard and special summon them face down defense position. Then, depending on the amount of Krawler monsters you have on the field, it gains the following effect. All monsters you control gain 300 attack if you have 2. Your opponent's cards and effects cannot be activated during the battle phase if it has 4, and then if it has 6 Krawler monsters on the field, your opponent cannot, or all your monsters can attack directly. That is absolutely crazy. You can just OTK your opponent if you have 6 Krawler monsters on the field because you have 2 Quarliarchs and then whatever else you have on the field. It just can OTK your opponent. Like, the spiders are going in, boys. 3 copies of the other Krawler Link monster. This card just requires 2 Earth monsters. Like, the Wormbaits are really easy to summon this monster. Like, you can't summon Quarliarch off of the Wormbait, but you can use it to summon this one and the other Link monster that they play. So basically what this does is crawler monsters this card points to cannot be destroyed by battle and then gain 300 attack and defense and can make up to 2 attacks during each battle phase. And if this card leaves the field or destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can target 2 crawler monsters with different names in the graveyard and special summon them face down defense. Then we play 3 copies of Nirugoans. I'm terrible with these names, but I've got it. Then we play 2 of these, or 3 of these. Crawler monsters card points 2 cannot be destroyed by battle, and they gain 300 attack. And then if this card, and if they battle an opponent's monster, any battle damage inflicted to your opponent is doubled as well. And if this card is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, while this card is in your control, you can target 2 crawler monsters with different names and special summon in the defense position and face down defense. So basically, you want to play 6 of these because they really help out. Or not 6 of these, but 3 of each of these, and then get 6 crawlers on the field at any given time to be able to OTK your opponent because they can just attack directly as long as you have Poorly on the field. Then we play a Boral Sword just to help us OTK a little bit. Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax. These were the ones I was talking about being 12 to 15 apiece. I don't know how much Avermax is now. I think he was like 15 to 17 last time I looked. Tops is 20, but you could take him out if you wanted to and play something like a copy of Boral Load, and it would drop the price significantly of this deck if you're looking for something budget. Nightmare Unicorn is another card that you could play in here to balance stuff. Phoenix to pop spells and traps. Cerberus to pop monsters, and then a copy of Inzektor Pelophenia. Basically what this does is if this card is link summon, you can discard a card and then target an insect monster you control, equip it to that monster, and then it gains 500 attack while it's equipped with that monster. But the really cool effect about this is that they can shuffle 3 monsters, 3 insects from your graveyard into your deck, and then you get to draw cards. So it's kind of like Pot of Avarice a little bit. So this card's really good as a one-of to just shuffle them back. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Like I said, this deck is one of the cheapest decks you can ever build in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because everything in the main deck is common, just about. I think everything is common in the main deck, except for the Ash Blossoms. And the Ashes are like $5 each, and the Call by the Graves. But you can get common Ash Blossoms, you can get common anything in this deck, except for a couple of the super rares, which they might as well be commons anyway. So, that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely hit that bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you around, guys.